A few years ago, military planners in Washington began noticing a strange and unsettling pattern. Some of the world's most advanced defense systems, worth billions of dollars, were being forced into action against weapons that cost less than a family car. Cheap drones. Small, slow, and often built with relatively simple technology, these unmanned aircraft were suddenly appearing across battlefields in the Middle East. And yet, despite their simplicity, they were triggering responses from some of the most expensive military systems ever created. In one incident, a drone that likely cost around $30,000 forced the launch of interceptor missiles worth millions of dollars each. It was a moment that revealed something deeply important about modern warfare, because this wasn't just about a single drone. It was about a strategy that military analysts now say could cost the United States billions of dollars over time. Iran's drone program has grown rapidly over the last decade. Instead of investing solely in expensive fighter jets or massive naval fleets, Iran focused on something different. Large numbers of low-cost drones capable of traveling long distances and carrying explosive payloads. These drones, often launched in swarms, are designed to overwhelm air defense systems. And when dozens of drones appear at once, defenders face a difficult choice. Either ignore them and risk critical infrastructure being hit, or intercept them using missiles that can cost 50 to 100 times more than the drone itself. This cost imbalance is exactly what makes Iran's drone strategy so powerful. Because modern air defense systems were never designed for this kind of economic warfare. Systems like Patriot, THAAD, and other interceptor platforms are incredibly effective at stopping incoming threats, but they were built to intercept ballistic missiles or high-value aircraft, not waves of cheap drones, and every time those interceptors are fired, the financial cost quickly adds up. Military reports suggest that operations to counter drones and missiles in the region have already cost the United States billions of dollars. But the financial cost may only be part of the story. Because if this strategy continues to evolve, it could force one of the most powerful militaries in the world to fight a war where the economics are completely reversed. And that raises a bigger question. Is Iran's drone strategy simply a tactical tool? Or is it the beginning of a new kind of warfare where the cheapest weapons can challenge the most expensive defenses on Earth? To understand why Iran invested so heavily in drones, we need to look at the broader military balance in the Middle East. For decades, the United States and its allies have dominated the region's skies. With advanced fighter jets, stealth aircraft, aircraft carriers, and sophisticated surveillance systems, American forces have maintained overwhelming technological superiority. Countries like Iran simply cannot compete with that level of military power in a traditional way. Building fleets of modern fighter jets costs tens of billions of dollars. Training pilots, maintaining aircraft, and operating complex air bases requires enormous resources. So instead of trying to match the United States plane for plane, Iran adopted a different approach, an asymmetric strategy. Rather than competing directly with expensive military platforms, Iran began investing in technologies that are cheaper, easier to produce, and capable of challenging more powerful opponents. Drones became the centerpiece of that strategy. Over the past decade, Iran has developed multiple types of unmanned aerial vehicles, including reconnaissance drones, attack drones, and so-called loitering munitions, drones designed to crash into targets like guided missiles. One of the most well-known examples is the Shahed 136, a small delta-wing drone that has gained attention for its long range and low cost. Unlike advanced fighter aircraft, these drones are relatively simple to manufacture. Many components can even be sourced from commercial markets. This allows them to be produced in large numbers, and that is exactly the point. Iran's strategy does not depend on a single drone successfully hitting its target. Instead, it relies on quantity. When dozens, or even hundreds, of drones are launched together, they create what military planners call a swarm attack. Air defense systems suddenly face multiple incoming threats at once. Radar operators must track dozens of objects in the sky. Commanders must decide which targets to intercept first. And every interceptor missile that is launched comes at a massive cost. Some air defense missiles cost over $3 million each, which means stopping a swarm of low-cost drones can quickly become extremely expensive. In this way, Iran's drone program is not just a military tool, it is an economic strategy. By forcing advanced militaries to use expensive defenses against cheap threats, Iran can create a situation where the financial burden of the conflict falls heavily on its opponent. And as this strategy continues to evolve, military analysts are beginning to ask an uncomfortable question. What happens if the drones keep coming? The true power of Iran's drone strategy becomes clear when you look at how these systems are actually used in real conflict scenarios. Unlike traditional air attacks, which often rely on a few highly sophisticated aircraft, drone warfare focuses on scale. Iranian military planners have increasingly embraced the concept of drone swarms, launching large numbers of unmanned aircraft at the same time to overwhelm enemy defenses. Imagine dozens of drones approaching a target from multiple directions. Each one may be relatively small and slow, but together they create a complicated problem for air defense systems. Radar operators must track every object. Defense commanders must quickly decide which targets are most dangerous. And interceptor missiles must be launched rapidly before any drone reaches its objective. In theory, modern air defense systems are extremely capable. Platforms like the Patriot missile defense system or naval interceptor missiles can successfully destroy incoming aerial threats. But these systems were originally designed to counter aircraft or ballistic missiles, not waves of inexpensive drones. That difference matters. Because every time a drone is intercepted, the defender may have to use a missile worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Meanwhile, the attacking drone might cost only a few tens of thousands. This is where Iran's strategy becomes particularly effective. Even if most of the drones are destroyed, the economic balance still favors the attacker. Military analysts often describe this as a cost-exchange ratio. If a $30,000 drone forces a $3 million interceptor missile to be fired, the defender is spending 100 times more money than the attacker. Over time, that imbalance can become significant. In large-scale conflicts, thousands of interceptors may be required to defend cities, military bases, and critical infrastructure. And interceptor missiles are not unlimited. They must be manufactured, transported, and stockpiled, which means every time one is fired, it reduces the defender's available inventory. Iranian strategists understand this dynamic very well. By launching repeated drone attacks over time, they can gradually force opponents to consume valuable defensive resources. It becomes not just a military contest, but a logistical and economic battle. And that is exactly why drone warfare is becoming one of the most important developments in modern conflict. Because in this new environment, victory may not always depend on who has the most advanced weapons. Sometimes it depends on who can afford to keep fighting the longest. By the time military analysts began fully understanding the scale of Iran's drone strategy, the financial impact was already becoming clear. In several recent military operations across the Middle East, the United States and its allies were forced to deploy large numbers of interceptor missiles to defend bases, ships, and critical infrastructure from drone and missile attacks. Each interception was successful from a tactical standpoint, but strategically, the cost of those interceptions quickly began to add up. Reports from defense officials revealed that in some operations, the United States spent billions of dollars countering drone and missile threats in the region. Naval destroyers fired advanced interceptor missiles. Air defense systems deployed Patriot interceptors. And radar networks remained active around the clock to detect incoming threats. Every layer of this defense network required enormous resources. Interceptor missiles alone can cost between $1 and $4 million per launch. Electronic warfare aircraft must remain airborne for hours. Fighter jets may need to scramble to intercept drones before they reach protected airspace. And maintaining this level of readiness across multiple countries requires constant logistical support. Fuel, maintenance crews, surveillance satellites, command centers, each part of the system adds to the total cost of defending against drone attacks. Many are designed to be expendable. They do not need to return to base. They simply fly toward their target and detonate on impact. This means they can be produced quickly and deployed in large numbers without requiring highly trained pilots or complex infrastructure. From a strategic perspective, Iran has effectively created a system where cheap weapons force expensive responses. Defense think tanks and military research institutions have started describing this as a form of economic warfare. Instead of trying to defeat a technologically superior enemy through traditional battles, the goal is to impose long-term financial pressure. If defending against drones continues to cost billions of dollars, the economic burden on defending nations could gradually increase over time. And this raises an important strategic dilemma. Should advanced militaries continue using extremely expensive missiles to stop low-cost drones, or should they develop entirely new systems designed specifically to counter this evolving threat? Because if drone technology continues improving and production continues increasing, the financial balance of modern warfare could begin shifting in ways that few military planners expected. What makes Iran's drone strategy even more significant is that it may represent the early stages of a much larger transformation in modern warfare. For decades, military power was defined by large, expensive platforms. Aircraft carriers, stealth fighter jets, strategic bombers. These systems required enormous budgets and years of technological development, which meant that only the most powerful countries could build and operate them. But drone technology is changing that equation. Unlike traditional aircraft, drones can be manufactured relatively cheaply and at a much faster rate. Many of the components used in drone systems, such as navigation chips, cameras, and communication equipment, are commercially available technologies that can be adapted for military purposes. This means smaller countries can develop drone programs without the massive industrial infrastructure required for traditional air forces. Iran recognized this opportunity early Instead of competing with the United States and building expensive fighter jets, Iranian military planners focused on expanding drone production and refining swarm tactics. Over time, these drones have become more sophisticated. Some models can travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. Others are designed to fly at low altitudes to avoid radar detection. Some can even coordinate with each other in large groups to attack multiple targets simultaneously. From a strategic standpoint, this creates a completely new kind of battlefield. Air defense systems must now deal with large numbers of small targets rather than a few high-value aircraft. And defending against dozens or hundreds of incoming drones requires far more defensive resources than stopping a single jet. Defense analysts from major research institutions have warned that this trend could redefine the economics of warfare. If drone production continues increasing globally, future conflicts may involve thousands of unmanned systems operating at once. These systems could target airports, power plants, oil facilities, ports, and military bases. In that kind of environment, traditional defense strategies may struggle to keep up. This is why military planners in the United States, Europe, and Asia are now urgently researching new counter-drone technologies. Laser weapons, electronic jamming systems, artificial intelligence-driven defense networks. The goal is to create systems capable of neutralizing large numbers of drones without relying on extremely expensive interceptor missiles. Because if the balance between cheap drones and costly defenses remains unchanged, the financial pressure on advanced militaries could continue growing. And the longer this imbalance exists, the more powerful Iran's strategy may become. In the end, Iran's drone strategy is not just about technology. It is about changing the rules of modern warfare. For decades, the United States built one of the most powerful and technologically advanced militaries in history. Its strength was based on precision weapons, stealth aircraft, aircraft carriers, and highly sophisticated defense systems designed to defeat conventional threats. But drone warfare is introducing a very different kind of challenge. Instead of facing a small number of advanced enemy aircraft or missiles, modern militaries are increasingly forced to confront large numbers of inexpensive, expendable systems. Each individual drone may not be particularly dangerous on its own, but when they appear in large groups, they create a complex and unpredictable battlefield environment. Defenders must detect them, track them, and destroy them before they reach their targets, and every defensive action carries a cost. This is exactly where the strategic imbalance appears. If a drone costs tens of thousands of dollars to produce but requires a missile worth millions to destroy, then the economic pressure begins to favor the attacker. Over time, repeated drone attacks can force opponents to spend enormous amounts of money simply maintaining their defenses. That is why many defense analysts believe drone warfare represents one of the most important shifts in military strategy since the introduction of precision-guided missiles. Cheap, mass-produced systems are now capable of challenging some of the most expensive weapons ever built, and the implications go far beyond the Middle East. Countries around the world are studying these developments carefully. From Eastern Europe to East Asia, military planners are preparing for a future where drone swarms could appear on battlefields, over naval fleets, or even above major cities. In response, governments are investing heavily in new technologies designed specifically to counter this emerging threat. Directed energy weapons, advanced electronic warfare systems, artificial intelligence-assisted defense networks. The race between drones and defenses has already begun. But the outcome of that race is still uncertain. For now, Iran's strategy has revealed a powerful truth about modern conflict. In the 21st century, warfare is no longer defined only by who has the most advanced technology. Sometimes it is defined by who can force their opponent to spend the most resources. And if cheap drones continue challenging billion-dollar defense systems, the economics of war itself may begin to change. Which raises one final question. In the long run, who can afford to keep fighting the longest?